HDFC, I was a senior UX specialist, which kind of had a lot of projects under me, and we would be working on small parts of either net banking or mobile banking, parts of it, and a bit of research also why we were designing those products. I wasn't very so I was just there for a year, so I haven't got a chance to work full to full like end to end projects basically. But yeah, in my tenure, we worked on a couple of. So I was involved in the research for Pays app, and then we worked on a couple of agricultural loan, journeys. Then there is in net banking there is a lot of small journeys that you have to constantly redesign for the need of the people, how the market is right now revolving around it. So yeah, that was what I was doing.
Okay. So when you say net banking, uh, what exactly were you working on specifically?
On net banking there are a lot of smaller journeys, right? Like how do you
Mhm.
go about sending someone money, or how do you go about adding a recipient. So I never used to personally work on an completely end-to-end project, but we used to get like small bits of journey that we had to redesign. So we
Okay.
talk to a bunch of people, understand how the journey should be, where is it lacking. So yeah.
Okay. So when you say talk to people, what sort of demographics or what sort of personas are we really looking at?
So it varied according to the project. To be honest, it was never
Mm-hmm.
very. To be very honest, it was not very um, specific. If we are talking about Pays app, let's say, we used to talk to all sorts of people who might be using online payment gateways, who might be using this kind of Google Pay, Phone Pay, those kind of things. But if we're talking to a agricultural loan or a warehouse loan kind of a journey, then we'll be talking to rather elderly people, or farmers who would be willing to go ahead and take this loan. So it depends on the project, what kind of part of the project we are working on.
Okay. So I'm a little interested in knowing about your relationship with the whole farmers loan portion. So do you think you can probably start talking about that? Considering
Sure.
that we're talking about accessibility, I think that uh, there are many areas you can look in when it comes to them, whether uh, just their age or the fact that they're illiterate. So how did not always, but whenever
Not all.
we
Yeah.
do, yeah, yeah.
So mostly, I would start saying that there are a lot of stakeholders involved. It was never really we have to talk just one set of people. We're designing for let's say the bank representatives who would go and talk to the farmers, and we're very pivotal in playing the role of how the loan would be taken. So we would be talking to a lot of stakeholders, including the bank relationship managers, the people on who the elderly people are dependent for their day-to-day activities or money transactions, and then the elderly people themselves understanding how. So not always this has been a part of my professional work as well, but I keep on talking to people to understand how they go about their day-to-day activities when finance is related. So yeah, it keeps on revolving around what kind of work that I'm doing, but yeah, multiple
Okay.
stakeholders at one point of time.
Okay. So when you say multiple stakeholders and especially the elderly,
Mm-hmm.
are we looking like at a particular age gap? Because I mean, it can start all the way from 60 and it can go all the way up to 80, right? And they don't really have like an upper limit when it comes to retiring. We are considering 60 being our start, the years where people begin to retire. So what age group are we looking at?
So age group is not the first thing that comes to the demographic considerations in certain projects, depending on the need. But in certain cases that we were working on, the age span would be 55 to 65 or 70. Not too old that they would not be a part of loan taking process altogether, and the next
Mhm.
generation to take over,
Right.
but not too
Right.
young also. So yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Some
And
some of
your
these people some of these people are more reliable with technology. Some of these people are more dependent than you think they are.
Mm-hmm.
Literacy plays a big role. How many people can read, write implies that they can use their smartphone or the internet or their computer for that matter. Most of the people, let's say in rural areas, would try to go to a bank and talk it out,
Mm-hmm.
having a representative help them.
So you're saying, out of all of them, although our general understanding would be that they would not be comfortable with phones, a lot of them were.
Yeah, because India has a really good penetration of internet, even in the rural segments right now.
Mm-hmm.
So availability of phone is there out there, not very abundantly, but it is there with people who are well-to-do families and even in the rural setup. So it depends how literate you are to use the internet in such kind of a setting,
Mm-hmm.
because
Right.
internet is widely available across
Yeah.
India thanks to you know the
Mm-hmm.
cheaper services that we have right now.
Yeah. Uh, so in that case, how did you find it just interacting with them and getting to know, um, how they function with the phones? Because I understand that earlier there was a time, right, where no one was comfortable with really using transferring anything, not just over there, but I think even here there was a point where my own dad used to just send $10 across when 2 years ago, when I just started making him use gpay. Now it's a lot different, right? He's much more comfortable. They have the whole messaging thing within gpay itself. So is that why they're very comfortable? Do you see the same sort of flexibility when using banking apps by
Not
them?
necessarily, because first of all, we are entrusting all our money to the banking apps. So while banking apps is very prevalent in the urban population, because no one really wants to go to the bank and get their things sorted, and if I can do it in my fingertips, why not? It might not apply to everyone. For an example, my father is still comfortable going to the bank and um, to talking to, he normally makes friends with all these bank managers. There's a personal relationship going on, so he just calls you, okay sir, I have to do this, I'll come at this time. And someone is always waiting at for at the bank for his work to be done. So it depends on what kind of an internet user are you and what kind of adaptability do you have for.
The fact that some of them are still convenient with going in person, and then at the same time, the flexibility that they have and their comfort level with gpay. Do you see that slowly moving towards banking apps, or do you think that would take longer?
No, it might take longer. Again, we have to, narrow down to the what kind of people are the end users of this app that we are designing. It might be, it might encompass all kinds of users, but only a certain user is going to use it very, very evidently or very religiously. For an
Right.
example, in so basically in all modern contributions to design, we are trying to make it more human. We are trying to make it seem more conversational, seem more touching, seem more something that we can rely upon, something that we can build our trust upon. So you can't all of a sudden do that with an app or with a digital product unless and until it's very well designed. A trust factor that gets a trust factor that builds over time with a particular human relationship in any kind of sector is of course unparalleled. So it's not exactly a problem that people are going to the bank and getting their things done. That is why banks exist for.
Right.
What I would say we are trying to solve is try to ease that interaction and try to bring new technologies into the town so that it would not be overcrowded or it would not be overburdened. The system would still function smoothly if there are small activities that we can do by ourselves in a digital product. And if you're still not comfortable, then go to the bank and get done with the bigger tasks. So yeah.
So when it comes to actually transitioning, or just the entire process that you went through when it came to interviewing them, what was something that what were things that were problematic that you thought, not exactly problematic, but their problem areas, or things that you thought were a hindrance with using technology? And do you think that there was any scope of really changing or breaking that mental model?
So the kind of research that we did was mostly conversational, mostly primary research, qualitative, a lot of data that is coming in terms of their stories or anecdotes, or this is the problem, because we did not have a survey kind of a data here, right? That you
Hmm.
just easily get represented by
Yeah.
the. So what we understood, but I would also personally say that we are kind of living in a world overloaded with information. There is too much information to consume right now, and both physically and online, to in that context also. So in every sector, we are trying to design how that information can be aptly consumable. How can we design the information to be consumed better so that it can help the user, rather than making the user overwhelmed with so much of data at one point of time. So I think that was a major problem that we are trying to solve, especially in finance sector. There are a lot of jargons. There are a lot of things that needs to be displayed or needs to be kept in certain way that the user has to see. So too much information. How do you design it better? Is the first design brief kind of a thing we would be working on in any kind of projects. So their mental model is, mostly it can be broken given the fact that they have good amenities, they have apt uses of technology in that kind of a sense. But most of them did not know how to transition from one sector to the other without facing a lot of bumps. So as designers, it's our responsibility to give a very seamless transition from someone who does not know XYZ to from someone who is aptly educated with that. So yeah.
So do you feel in that
Yeah.
case,
Also,
um,
with these people, I would say, in financial matters, you need a lot of reminders, especially the elderly people.
mhm,
You know, if I have come across people who keep a physical artifact to keep notes, something like a
okay.
diary, where
Mhm.
you know इस दिन को ये करना है, or you have to do this on this kind of a date or this timeline. So not everyone uses phone for everything, is what I would say at this point of time even.
Okay. Okay, great. Uh, but in that case, um, the ones who did use the apps, how comfortable did you think they seemed while using it? Because you said literacy is definitely something that played a role, right, while designing. So how did you really come around that being an issue? Is Was there anything that you all could have done or you all did do to like overcome that part of it?
So most of this kind of transactions gets done through a banking representative, going to their houses and making them understand. So their banking requirements or loan document requirements, that is the major part of taking a loan, a substantial amount of loan for agricultural purposes or warehousing purposes. It's normally done by a bank representative who is physically there. It's a
Hmm.
very niche segment. Again, not everyone will be using it. The app is, I would say personally, mostly designed for the urban population who do not have time to, go to the bank and get things
Hmm.
done. And I want to add a recipient, or I want to send some money to you. I know your, let's say, account number. I know your bank branch. You have given me all the details. If I can do that by my phone, I would not need to go to a branch and fill out a form, manually and do that.
Right.
So I don't think app is reaching every other bank account holder in the country. So
But do you think, as designers, we should probably be considering all personas, or what is your take on that? Because I
so
mean, there are so many. Technically, everyone's a persona for us because everyone's using an app. But in this sort of a case, do we leave them out? How do you think we should like go about with something like this?
So I think, as a designer, it is about your job is to make people's life easier through whatever you are doing, as a functionality aspect or as a journey perspective. It's all about the journey. Like if I'm able to do task A without facing a lot of hindrance by myself, and if the product is self-explanatory for me to intuitively use, along with the amount of knowledge that I have gained from the past 1 to 2 decades along with my smartphone uses, then I think you would have succeeded. You don't have to design something for a very particular niche of people, or for the whole broader set of mind of people, right? Personal example again, if I can teach my father how to use a bank app, how to use or how to perform a simple task using a bank app, I think that app's purpose is still getting fulfilled.
Right. Right.
So so I believe that it is all about how can you make the journey better. Sometimes there might be some human assistance required to it for some certain age of people or particular group of people. Sometimes it's very intuitive enough that you see, okay, add money, you click there and you see all the information, and it is intuitive enough for you to fill it. It's all about the journey. So we don't really always need to design for everyone, keeping everyone's point of view in our mind, but it can be also achieved through subtle nudges here and there.
Yeah, I guess like you said, right? They would rather have the bank representative go to their house and do it, and maybe he could just use the phone in that case.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So besides technology, do you feel like trust was also a big factor while just interacting with them and getting them to like use not just an app but just technology in general? Or do you think it was more trust with technology or just trust in general?
What I have come across is designing for trust is not that difficult. It is a difficult arena, of course. I'm not gonna say it's not. It's easy and a cakewalk, but when it comes to money and when it comes to one particular agency taking the whole accountability for your life saving, it is a little sensitive topic to design around.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
anyone who is in the fintech sector who is dealing with people who might not be very well about very well aware about their money need to design in such a way that once after I interact with someone from that organization, or after I use that kind of a digital product, I should feel empowered, or I should feel, as a user, I should feel trusted enough that okay, I can trust this person to, or I can trust this product to take care of my money. So
What exactly do you think, it's trust in general or is it just technology being?
it is a mix of both. People are not very well accustomed. So if you look at a larger picture, people are not very used to the digital products in all across the country. It has to be some segments of people who are very well versed with technology can trust their money. For example, our generation, but
Mhm.
not every generation can do it, right? So in that scenario, some kind of a physical interaction with a make sure that our money is not going to the wrong hand is important. And trust is not just built out of the blue. You have to. Why do we trust Google? Kind of a is like I personally put all my photos and everything in Google Photos, and I trust Google. And I have been around Google since I was, let's say, 12, right? So that kind of a thing that that has transitioned into our lives. So designing for trust is not just a technical challenge, but it's also a very human challenge. So yeah,
Right.
I would say it's a
So
mix.
what I'm hearing is like you gave your example with Google, right? So do you think repetitive use would increase the trust in the long run, like GPay has kind of pretty much got themselves grounded with almost everyone? I mean, you see your vendors using it, and there was a time where I think people said this wouldn't work, especially in a country like India, considering the illiteracy. So, do you think that repetitiveness is what created the trust, or maybe in when I'm really thinking of GPay, the process being a lot shorter as compared to what you would do using
Bank
a
app.
banking app? Yeah.
So how I would attempt this question is basically it depends on what kind of product that we are designing for. Repetitive use, there are a lot of psychological reasons why we trust something that we trust. It could be very human centric, it could be very ease centric, functionality centric, right? But Google is just one digital example. But if you look at Paytm, you must have seen those machines in Kirana shops that
Right. Yeah.
speak aloud, right? Rupees 50 has been, and in their regional languages, कि 50 रुपए आपके account में credit हुआ
Uh-huh.
right now, if I'm
Yeah.
doing that. So introduction of some kind of small innovation, small active artifacts like that can also help increase interest. I think before demonetization, we did not think Paytm would work. So
Right.
it would not be. We were not aware about the power that it can, deeply dive into such a rural segment. But now we see this kind of a machines in every. Like I go to this Ganne juice wala, and that person has this. Uh, a Paytm machine and you scan
Right.
it, it just speaks aloud. And there you know that okay, my account exists and 50 rupees has been deposited to my account because this person took 5 glass. So
So I
it's
think we
very,
can say, yeah, that kind of personified something that is so digital and just like a screen. They kind of gave that human touch to it. So it's
it
probably
kind of
why.
gave a human touch in a form of a conversation. Someone is telling you that भैया मैंने
Right.
50 रुपए deposit कर दिया है, right? And me
Mm-hmm.
as a customer telling you might not be that trustworthy because I don't know if it is, but
You don't
some
know me,
machines
right?
also cross verifying it and saying that okay, this has been done, and
Mm-hmm.
it adds touch to it. So that's a very good example about how trust has been designed into our newly system of digital finance.
Right, right. As designers, when it comes to accessibility, how not just for us, but just in general, how is the tier 2 versus tier 1 cities different
Hmm.
when it comes to just accessibility in general? Is Paytm is something new, the whole little box thing, a new addition to it. So besides
Mhm.
that, what else are like noticeable factors that you see that are different from the two cities?
City-wise, I would say the willingness to adapt is a little more in the urban population because it kind of boils down to the fact that if they don't do it, it might get delayed if they wait for a physical interaction. So
Right.
in urban population, I don't think people want to delay it, knowing the fact that they can self-serve it. In the same time, the personal connect with the bank managers, etc., might be missing. But you go to a small town, most probably all the households know the bank people, bank staff that is there in their local regions, and they have a regular connection with that, those bank staff. And they might be, it's just again an assumption and an edge case scenario, they might be going to the bank physically for getting their things done, even if they know they can do it online. It's just a small time chit chat with people, and then your work is also getting done. You're also extending your relationship with that person, and coming back after finishing your work. Apart from that, I think access to information is a little more in the urban population because everyone around you is doing the same. One kirana shop adapts the Paytm, Paytm machine approach. Then I think आसपास के जितने लोग हैं वो भी adapt करने की कोशिश करते हैं, and
Right.
they try to see which is making their life easier. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of a good thing that I find, that the willingness to adapt and information accessibility is a little higher. And when it comes to the other part of the question, something like I would say that for anything to be accessible, functionality is the first mm, pillar rather than aesthetics. So in some essential apps like banking, functionality does not really matter as much as aesthetic does not really matter as much as the functionality matters for doing that task. I'll give
Mm-hmm.
an example of a very personal opinion again, cred, and the way cred's UI is fantastic, right? But
Right.
it might not be very convenient for a person who is just trying to send money.
Right.
It
Right.
might be very
I
convenient
completely
for
agree.
our generation who is, we want to win a lot of vouchers and we want to gamify the entire experience. That is good for us, but not for a person who is not for my father who is just trying to send me some money, right?
Absolutely.
It's again a fintech app might not have to look as beautiful as a shopping app because we are not trying to sell most of the products the way an e-commerce app is selling.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to take a lot of things into accountability when we are talking about accessible design. It doesn't mean that the accessible design portal, the final outcome, has to look very bland and very, you know, without. It has to be basically. I would say it has to be right mix of balance depending on what the prioritization of any problem that we are trying to solve.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that point. I mean, you couldn't have hit that on the head better. Uh, Definitely, the functionality aspect. I think a lot of these apps nowadays, I think as designers also, we tend to get a little swayed with making things look pretty, and then, the functionality aspect gets lost within all of that. Another point that you mentioned earlier was during these points was that. Access to information over here and the willingness to learn over here is a lot more. I realized that that is definitely turning out, it could be a little bit of a problem. Now, speaking from actually an incident that happened with a friend of mine, she happened to go to the ATM, and it wasn't here, it was somewhere a little more on the inside. She didn't really know how to use the card, and she kept putting it in, and I don't know what exactly she did with the ATM machine. This other guy happened to help her out with it. I think he swapped the cards out, his card with hers or something like that, and took away the card. And she, by the time she actually realized what happened, she in fact didn't even realize what happened. She went to the bank manager and asked him, I can't really take out my money. By this time, this guy has taken her card to another ATM, drawn out her money, I think around 60,000 or something like that, and left. uh,
So
Now this is very shocking. My friend just stood there absolutely in complete shock, trying to figure out what happened. Now, I mean, this sort of a trust, it's not even, it doesn't even have anything to do with trust to the bank, right?
yeah,
Because it was her lack of knowledge.
yeah.
So the same thing could also happen online with apps or any of the banking sites and stuff. So, how do you think we can probably change or alter something within the apps? I know we're not designing just for them, but I think it becomes our responsibility in a way to make sure that we educate them to some extent so that these sort of scenarios don't happen.
So, so what your friend faced is a very edge case scenario. Card getting swiped, and because the other person kind of knew the ATM pin, they could,
Hmm.
he could take out money or she could take out money. But I feel that for trust to be built without nudging, there should be more authentication factors that is coming into your mind. So let's say if it's a very hypothetical scenario again, if you're drawing out money from ATM, rather large sums of money consecutively twice, maybe
Hmm.
you get a OTP in your mobile to the number that is registered, and then once you enter that OTP, then only you can take out another 50,000 rupees, right? So those kind of two-factor authentication helps you regain the trust on the system, because you know that they're trying to check on you again and again. If your money is not going elsewhere, it's just you who is trying to replace that money. And also, if let's say in your friend's case, maybe she could not understand what to do with her ATM card because she did not know how to operate an ATM card, assuming again. But if the ATM machine had some kind of visual cue: enter your card, enter your secret pin number, take out money, wait for 1 minute, whatever the visually, if it was depicted, maybe this kind of a situation could have been avoided. So
Right.
designing trust does not only have to be digital; it can be physical as well. A combination of digital and physical artifacts.
Right. Absolutely. Uh, Speaking of, sorry, just give me a second. Yeah. So now you've been designing for a very long time, and you've done, I'm pretty sure, B2C and B2B and all of those sort of things. With your experience from moving to front facing apps, like consumer using apps where we would use it in tier 1 cities, versus what you've experienced with um, designing for rural areas. What exactly have you learned on an overall that we can, just as designers, take forward? Um, Not just in designing, like you said, physical digital experiences, but also, like, can we be a contributor in a way to designing the physical experience?
Okay. My personal takeaway, I'll start with that question.
Yeah.
To to make users financially prudent or to understand finances is not really very well accessible in our country. If you take a wild case, not a lot of, let's say, women still do not know
Mm-hmm.
how to manage their finances. So if as a designer you are doing something to simplify the entire process, or to decrease the frustration points, or to ensure that the security still remains, or to understand that okay, this is where the users are facing problem, let me design around the same. You would understand that in a country like India the impact is huge, so whatever you're working on directly impacts millions of people. If you're simplifying a customer journey, it directly impacts millions of people. So I think that was one of the key takeaway from me as a designer, that I am contributing in something that is huge. I'm contributing in something that is making people empowered, feel empowered about taking their own matters into their own hand. And it is making people financially independent. Like if I teach my mother how to manage her money on an app, she doesn't have to depend on me or one of my siblings or her husband to get it done. She is becoming financially independent herself. So I think that takeaway was one of the most important takeaways from my stint in working in a bank. And designers can make it better by making simple journeys and making the whole process more accessible than now it seems it is, because it seems very difficult right now, but if it can be simplified, I'm pretty sure the financial dependency would reduce from a lot of people. Another takeaway was, to get into something we have to take an empathetic approach. We kind of belong to the creamiest layer of Indian educated youth. So unless and until we understand what exactly is the crux of the problem on a very ground level foundation, it might not be very easy to design for something that would have a great impact in the grassroots level. So understanding the impact and scale of the project, basically it also helps you increase your design maturity, the way you approach a problem, the way you go about gathering some kind of solutionable approach, that shifts greatly if you worked in a project which is involving a lot of people's trust on you, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I loved this session with you. I think I learned more rather than, sitting through one of my classes or something. This is definitely very informative. I love your key takeaways and a lot of the points that you brought regarding accessibility not having to just be digital. I think that's something that we as designers often tend to leave out. We forget that we're not just designing for apps and websites, we're designing for people.
So how
And
would I like to put it is, we are designing experiences, and that experience
absolutely, yeah.
can be a little fluid. It does not have to be purely digital. It does not have to be purely physical. Somewhere we can mix it and make it more reachable to people.
Right, right. This was a great talk. Thank you so much.